Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Bottomless Coffee. I am Jerome. I am definitely a caffeinated host today, and I'm really excited to talk about political activism and about anti hate work in the political sphere. Now, I think as I mentioned, maybe last episode or the episode before, we are still continuing to push production boundaries here at Bottomless Coffee. And last episode, we had a single live audience member in the background. Today, we are having a conversation across an ocean for the first time, which is exciting. In fact, there are a lot of firsts with our guests. First person to reach out and ask for a conversation, first person to suggest that a different guest host who will be interviewing next conversation. And I'm really excited. Dalia Grinfeld, how are you today?
Hello. I'm also caffeinated. My double espresso is already empty, and I'm really excited for this conversation across the pod.
Yes,
Pod, both pond and
both.
pod.
That's great. So we spoke just a little bit before we started recording, and so we've got just a general idea of each other's kind of political past. And I apologize to everyone out there. I did not realize that these questions were going to be such softballs, and so we may get deeper on some questions, we may not. But we're you're one of the first people that I've interviewed where we don't have a pre-existing relationship. And as a control freak, I think this will be a really fun exercise for me to not have all of the answers to the questions ahead of time and what have you. But let's just talk a little bit about political activism. So I love your work as you described it to me and as you're going to describe it to everyone in a
Thanks.
little bit. I have been just kind of uh, I, I was kind of working back through my early political activism, right? And as a gay man who's casually involved, right? For me, I think it was when the issue really hit close to home, and when the protest was like outside of my house. That's that's when I would be involved. So I remember in America's conversation on marriage equality, we would all meet at my house. We would make mimosas. We'd put them in a thermos. We'd take our signs and we'd go out. And it was
Yeah.
like a protest in lieu of brunch for us at that time. We've gotten a little bit more serious. And after a series of school shootings, I remember going out with no mimosas, but with signs for gun restrictions. We certainly protested on behalf of encaged immigrants, protested on behalf of climate change, and, just to go from the beginning to a recent history, of course, I ran for office on a platform that highlighted racial discrimination. So now you are up to speed
Go
on my
for it.
story. What is your early experience with political activism?
So my political activism journey started rather early by accident or just kind of by nature. I
Hmm.
was in high school and I was just interested in the two pillars of my life. I'm Jewish myself and I'm also really political. And I've joined a political or youth political party when I was 14 because that's the age you're allowed to in Germany where I'm based and
Uh-huh.
where I live. So the day I turned 14, the day after I joined a political party, I was really active in Jewish communal life, and that's on the activist side and also youth work. And I started to combine these two rather early on. In the Jewish high school, which at that time was the only Jewish high school in Germany, um,
Wow.
I was the head of the student council there, and I started making campaigns about issues that I cared about and my peers cared about. And that was not a I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a goal necessarily. I just
Mm-hmm.
knew that this is something I want to do, and this is important to me next to hobbies and schoolwork. So really, it started out because I care, and I think that's the key to my political activism journey is because I care, and that's the reason I go on is the care from the bottom of the coffee, but also from the ground up on theme, but also in general. So after that, I moved
Oh,
to
wait,
university.
wait, wait. Can I interrupt
Yeah,
you for 1 second? Just
sure.
regarding caring. I remember in episode 3, I spoke with someone on political ideology who, at an early age, was first an American Republican and then a Libertarian. And then he kind of realized that he needed to care about other people. And that
Ooh.
really informed his political ideology. And so, do you feel as though you came out of the womb really caring for other people? Have you always just been like a kind of empathic, empathetic person? Or was there a moment in your life where you were like, oh no, caring is important. I should do that.
I wonder if I'm the right person to answer, or if other
Mm.
people around me should answer this
Oh, sure.
about me. But I think it's really something that has always been with me. I started my the first event actually I organized was in sixth grade, as like a goodbye party for
Oh my
all of
gosh.
our entire grade before we go off to a different school system because we changed then. So I think it
Yeah.
was always in within me, and I also think the story of my family. So
Hmm.
as I said, I'm Jewish myself, but I have a migration, what we call migration background in Germany, meaning my dad is from Argentina and my mom is from the former Soviet Union. And I have my own family was persecuted by the Nazis in the
Hmm.
Holocaust, Shoah, and there has been a lot of movement. Migration from A to B to C all the way around, and by that also not always having the privilege to vote, to go to school,
Oh
to
yeah.
do what you want, to say what you want. And I'm the generation born in the 90s in Germany, in unified Germany, in a democratic Germany, having the opportunity to vote, to say what I want, to be what I want, to do what I want. And I remember, I love voting. I'm this year in Germany, there's national elections, and I'm so excited. I almost can't sleep. I remember the first time I was allowed to vote when I was 16 on a local election.
Hmm.
It was something ridiculous about like some garden changes in my local neighborhood, and I woke up really early, and I hate waking up early,
Oh, okay.
and was really excited, like, Mom, we can vote today. And she's like, what do you mean? The elections are not for like months. What are you talking about?
Oh
And
no.
I made her go vote because I thought it's so important. And I read all the newspaper articles about it, and I got
Yeah.
informed and was really into the voting process. And I remember the conversation about voting with my family, that a lot of my family members weren't allowed to vote in their life,
Hmm.
right? Because they were persecuted even in the former Soviet Union because they were Jewish.
Yeah.
And that's something that I do think is part of my story, that I want to use the rights, the democratic rights that I have, to influence and have impact, do good, do well, and really impact a broader society. And that starts always by yourself. I do think saying, being a political activist and say, like, go on the street and demonstrate, or do this, or sign this petition, if you haven't signed the petition yourself, like, what are you talking about?
Hmm.
What, that's not real. Like, you have to sign your own petition or whatever you do first, and set an example for others. And I
I
also
agree.
believe that it starts very small. Being a political activist doesn't mean that 24/7 you're on the street, not eating, not sleeping. Being a political activist means that you have issues that you care about, political or societal or health, whatever it is, but topics that you care about, that you want to broaden other people's horizons about, or you want to change a policy, or even something small. You just want people to inform themselves about it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, where I started, is not saying, this is the top 10 things I want to change in the world in my life. It's really not where I started. Maybe I have them now, but is by doing what I think is right because of the topics that interest me. And that was very early on, because I lived as an openly Jewish person in Germany,
Hmm.
which is funny because I know in the US context, the sentence doesn't make sense. But a lot of Jews in Germany are not really comfortable with their Jewish identity, because there's still a lot of anti Semitism, a rise in anti Semitism also. And an uninformedness about Jews in Germany.
Wow.
So
Still to
people,
this day, that is.
yeah,
I
people
agree.
don't
That is
know that.
surprising.
Exactly. So in the US, you have Seinfeld and Friends and all kinds of, I would say, TV shows, but also in general, people know things about Jews. They say Happy Hanukkah, and people know what
Yeah.
that means. In
Oh, you're
Germany,
kidding.
oh no, I'm not. Like in Europe, think about the amount of Jews that live in Europe compared to the US or New York, and then think about the representation. Jewish life in Germany specifically, but also in Europe, only restarted after the Shoah, after the Holocaust.
Hmm.
And then you have a big gap, and then you have a very small, there was the huge 6 million Jews persecuted, and even more persecuted, but 6 million people not there anymore, literally
Yeah.
murdered. So you have a lot of people missing as part of the society, and then rebuilding the Jewish identity took time.
Yeah.
And that's why I do think there's a gap where we know today, and one of the big claims of the Jewish community is starting to be that Jews are not only viewed as black and white in history books as part
Hmm.
of the Shoah, anti-Semitism in the newspapers or Israel-Palestine conflict in the media. And those are really the three themes where Jewish life is focused on in Germany. That's why people don't know much about Jews in Germany. And fun fact, 2021, this year, is 1,700 years of Jewish life in Germany. So it's a celebratory year.
Yes. Oh, good.
Where we hope to set also the example that we need to in education, for example. We need people to understand that's not only Jews, it really comes to all different marginalized communities, that we need to understand Jewish life, Jewish values, Jewish traditions. We also need to understand BIPOC realities. We need to understand LGBTIQ realities, what it means to be LGBTIQ, queer, trans, whatever you call yourself. But in order to empathize with that, in order to understand what other life realities are, and that it's normal and it's part of our society. So
that's really. I feel as though we went from early life to kind of what you're doing now, to where your passions are, what you're organizing around. But the only event that you actually mentioned that you put on, and I know you put on more, you've done more, is the one in 6th grade. I think you said that was a goodbye party. Continue to take us from that 6th grade event to get us to where you are as this passionate person and informed, right? And I think that's a big difference. A lot of us can be really passionate on a lot of issues and just not realize how uninformed we are. And so I'm genuinely interested in learning to how you got to where you are.
I'll do it shorter this time.
Oh, we'll see.
When the storyline is, I was involved in local Jewish student activism and university, and was building up a local Jewish student union. And from that, I realized there's no national union. And had the two pillars: political activism, Jewish activism. Wanted to combine them a bit broader and bigger, and had a group of people who were interested in the same. So we founded the Jewish Student Union in Germany. So 5 years ago, there was the first national organization to politically, but internally and externally represent 25,000 young Jews in Germany. And I was elected as president there. And for 2 years, I built up this organization and then really started this voice of young Jewish people in Germany, to give them a voice, to give us a voice, and to empower ones. And that led me, and at the same time, I was working in politics in Brussels in the EU, and had really integration, migration, and education as topics. And at the student union, it was interesting because I was interested, obviously, in fighting anti-Semitism and hate and all kinds of important issues to Jews. But I also said, very importantly, other items: LGBTIQ inclusion, women empowerment, and such issues. To the US, that, of course, sure. But in Germany, that was especially in the Jewish sector, was the first organization that touched up on this issue. There was not a mention of women empowerment before publicly within this Jewish world. So to me, I wanted this Jewish young voice also to represent the new trends, the new topics, and for the young generation to be empowered to take part in Jewish community life, but also in the political world. Because to date, there's not a publicly elected member of parliament that is Jewish since
you're kidding.
Second World War. Yes, there has not been anyone yet. So that said, after this National Jewish Student Union that I built, I kind of stumbled into realizing that I really would like to do both combined political work and political Jewish activism together. That's why today I think the topic for me, Jewish political activism, covers it. And I got to learn a lot about different Jewish and anti-hate organizations in my time in my student union activism. And ADL, the Anti-defamation League, where I professionally am right now and love to work at as the Assistant Director of European Affairs, was a place that I remember. That's a major moment at a conference. It was the Never Is Now conference by ADL, and in December in 2018, and I was invited to speak as part of the student programming as a representative. And I remember sitting in the audience, and even now ADL CEO Jonathan Greenblatt speaking, and he spoke from a Jewish civil rights organization that has 25 offices in the US and multiple in an international affairs team. And he spoke about the work of ADL fighting anti-Semitism and fighting hate, to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment to all. And for such a long time in my student union activism, I said in different words, but I said the same: me as a Jewish person, I want
Yes.
to fight anti-Semitism, but I also believe deeply that we cannot just fight anti-Semitism. We have to fight all kinds of hate, and we have to get our efforts together in order to do that. And in Europe, I will honestly say a lot of people didn't resonate with that. Like, why would you want to do this?
Huh.
What for? Yeah, because we're a bit, it's not the same context that we have here. And I felt so seen and heard in this moment. I remember I was sitting in there in the audience and thought, huh, wow, okay, I'm not crazy. It's
Right.
really, it's a thing. Yeah, and that was the moment I knew that ADL is a special organization, and that's why I was really happy to join almost 2 years ago soon at ADL, and I'm based in Berlin for ADL as a
Yes.
representative, and work really with my colleagues about empowering Jewish communities, supporting them in terms of anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic incidents, but also polling about anti-Semitic attitudes, the Global 100 study we do. And in general, then mostly what I'm responsible for is programs. So what ADL does since over 100 years is a lot of great programming on anti-hate, anti-bias education, anti-racism, anti-Semitism, all kinds of these kinds of programs, and they're great. And we're translating them, adapting them, and offering them together with our partners on the ground. We're offering them to the Jewish but also non-Jewish world in order to achieve this global mission of ADL. So that's the broad
Thank
story
you.
now.
You did it. You brought us to the present. And there was a moment in there that really resonated with me, and it was a funny moment when you said, "Oh, I'm not crazy," because when you so you kind of took us on a little bit of a journey, 1,700 years of Jewish people living in Germany. But because of really horrific events, it's almost as though you have to rebuild your footprint and your place in society. And so there are a lot of opportunities for firsts for you. And when you are kind of that torchbearer and you're seeing problems in front of you that people haven't addressed, you're like, am I making these problems up? How could these have existed for so long and no one has done anything about them? And I have been there feeling crazy, and it's really nice when someone else is like, yes. When someone else just acknowledges that they see these problems too, it really does make a world of difference. And I see you making notes, so if we need to come back to something, let me know. But I do want to know now in the present how you're measuring success, given your professional background and your history as what sounds like a real organizer, a real political organizer. How are you? Is it minds changed for you? You mentioned some firsts, like maybe getting someone in parliament might be on your list of things to do. What makes you feel as though you are taking those steps forward?
That is such a good question, and a constant question in political activism. There's a sentence that you probably also know: moving the needle.
Yes,
And
yes.
it's new to me as I'm not a native English speaker, and this sentence or the idea, the concept of moving the needle is really what a lot of political activism means. Is we can't change the world in a day, and also not in 10 days, and not in 100, but we
Mm-hmm.
can move the needle. So what we do at ADL, but also in general, is collecting our wins, because there's so much. In political activism, I think you need to be aware there's a lot of defeat and there's a lot of slow movement, and sometimes
Yeah.
it's frustrating. And especially, I'm a rather fast-paced person. I would like to have outcomes very soon, and I want to do a campaign, and I want the policy change tomorrow, and then I want the education system to apply it, and then the law enforcement, and
Mm-hmm.
I would like to do this all in 2021, because of course, why not? It should be possible. Why not?
What's the
Um,
problem here?
yeah, I don't. I
Here's
can
some
build
coffee.
a program, and
Get
I
to
can see.
work.
Yeah, I can see how this works, but that's not often the reality. So I think collecting, understanding where your wins are is important to move forward and to recognize it. Um, how we do it is we have a lot of measurements. So on the one
Mm.
hand, when the Jewish communities we serve, because we don't serve ourselves, we serve the Jewish communities of me specifically, also Europe, and often they come back with appreciation, and that's a perfect measure. For
Yeah.
example, the Danish Jewish community very recently had an issue with the ban of circumcision,
Okay.
and that is the ritual Jewish circumcision. Brit Milah is a very important Jewish ritual for men or for boys at 8 years old. 8 days
I
old.
was like, oh no.
Um, no, no, sorry. That was a misspoken
It's okay.
word. But this Jewish ritual is really important for being part of Jewish life, and it's a basic. And that was an attempt by Parliament to outlaw it,
Hmm.
meaning us as a really an institution that covers these items for Jewish communities reached out to us, and we were able to support them in this matter. And
Hmm.
the appreciation that comes back for thank you for supporting us and building together whatever campaign and whatever behind the scenes and letters and all what ADL does in such a moment is exactly what where you see measurement of success is the appreciation. Other ones are definitely um, I mean, similar to that, evaluation. So when you do programs, you have
Oh, sure.
evaluations and you see people responding to the evaluation with, I can use these skills now to do ABC, or I'm thankful that I participated because I'm able to do whatever it is afterwards. So that's one. And then obviously, if really policy wise, if there's policy changes, then that's a big one. Last year, one of my smaller but also major wins was a policy that I was able to change within the Berlin Senate, so federal
Oh,
state Berlin.
cool.
Um, a lot of education system, a lot of our police and education and other things are federal state laws, not national law. And that means you need to go through all 16 German federal states to change it all
Oh my
around.
gosh.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hassle, but it works. And one of the there's a new anti-discrimination law in the federal state of Berlin, but this anti-discrimination law didn't include anti-Semitism because the people who wrote it, none of them, I think they're all against anti-Semitism,
No.
but they were like, okay, anti-racism, anti-hate, that works. Like that probably includes everyone, but it doesn't because
Hmm.
because racism and anti-Semitism is both important and both an issue, but it's not the same.
And they
So
stated racism, but did not
yeah,
state anti-Semitism.
exactly. They stated
Okay.
for specific forms of hate, and anti-Semitism wasn't part of that. And actually, it was a bit of a struggle to get it in there.
Hmm.
You need because the people in Parliament in federal state Parliament didn't realize why this is relevant. So I'm part of the Berlin Senate expert circle on anti-Semitism, and within this expert circle, we got together and really formulated a letter to the heads of parties and really made them listen to why this is relevant to put in there. And at the end, it worked and it's fine and it's already in law. And that means that by law, you are now able to quote this law if you've been discriminated against as a Jewish person for a specific reason. So that is, it
Wonderful.
sounds a bit small, but at the end of the day, it makes a big difference because otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
there's no way for a Jewish person to say, I mean, obviously there's other laws outlawing anti-Semitism, but for this specific law, there wasn't another option to do so. And this will be replicated by other 15 states.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so
Wonderful.
I think that's one of those like moments where you're like, okay, policy change.
Yes. Even as you're describing it, I can see you're like sitting up a little straighter. You're smiling. You're very proud of it. I'm proud of you for it. That's beautiful. Let's take a quick coffee break. Maybe not for you.
I'm jazzed already.
We'll be right back. Okay, we are back with Dalia Grinfeld. We are talking political activism, anti hate, organization. And just for the benefit of everyone listening, how do you pronounce your last name?
So in different languages, I say it differently.
Yeah.
In English, Dalia Grinfeld is absolutely right and fine. I listen to all kinds of names at this point. In German, I would say Dalia Grinfeld, and then depending on language, it's a bit different. But if it sounds close, I usually turn my head. It's like, oh yes, that's me.
That's a question that I've grown to ask people because you kind of assume that you know how to say someone's name. But a couple of episodes ago, I said someone's name incorrectly for an hour. And then at the very end, they corrected me. And I was like, Cal, come on. An
But it's so
hour of conversation.
part of inclusivity to
Yes,
like,
I
be also
agree.
first, it's not a problem if you I don't know how to pronounce your name or your pronoun. What are your pronouns? I don't think there's it's not a negative thing. It's an inclusive way of interacting. So I think that's great. Thanks
Well,
for
what
asking.
are your pronouns, Talia?
She, her.
I'm he, his.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I think that covers my risk of having made incorrect assumptions. So I feel good.
the anti-bias work for
Yeah,
today.
yes, yes. Well, you know what? It's a journey, and every day is a little bit more, and we'll see what future conversations will bring in that arena. Maybe you can come back, and we can talk more on it. That could be fun.
That would be great. When
Uh,
your presidential speech, I'll come back.
hey, okay. So let's talk a little bit more about these non-governmental organizations that you've built over time, and specifically the intersection between NGOs and political activism. So as I kind of mentioned near the top of the conversation, I was chair of my neighborhood association while also running a campaign. And that was a fun line to walk because that was a 501c. Oh, you don't know what that means. Oh, you do, but no one else would really. It was a nonprofit. And nonprofits in America are generally not supposed to get involved in political activism. And so I received letters saying, you can't do both, though, of course, you can. Um, and I just wonder for you, have you almost exclusively built organizations that can be involved politically, or how has that experience looked for you?
So in general, we don't have this distinction in Germany
Oh,
and or Europe in this way.
that's nice.
So you need an NGO status to be an NGO and get the tax benefits for an NGO, and to receive donations and stuff like that. But you can still be politically active on various issues.
Hmm.
I don't know of any problem with that. As long as it's not against the law or against the constitution or something that's solely within the realms.
Yeah.
The way I started to build NGOs is really, and looking back now, I wasn't at 18, 19 years old, I wasn't strategically thinking like I'm building the local student union
Right.
with this specific strategy and this goal, but I was just doing it and looking back, and that's still what I do is need based. I have a need based approach.
Hmm.
So because my peers and myself, honestly, also I was my group that I wanted to engage with myself and my peers.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked from what are the needs of our community, the community that I want to serve. And so I started to build around that. And the same with another organization that I built is the Jewish LGBTIQ organization in Germany called Keshet Germany. Keshet is a rainbow in Hebrew.
I love that.
And that organization we also built from the needs of LGBTIQ Jewish people in Germany. And from this need assessment, you go to what are the goals, what is the entire model of where to go from here. So that's, I think, one of the baselines to build an organization, and then to stay in political activism. Not every organization needs it. I do think there's great organizations of like painting together and
Yeah.
pottery and I don't know what, and it's great. And that's is also an NGO, and it's a community, and it comes together. And who knows? Sometimes they develop an interest for actually, oh, there's a common political interest that we want to address. For example, volunteer like tax benefits for volunteers at organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Happened before. I know someone who was literally in a pottery class, and they got together within an NGO around pottery, and then wanted to do some activism about volunteers being recognized for their activism in taxes. It's amazing. It's so smart. So that developed. I do think most NGOs have an agenda in terms of society, politics, and action, and that's what brings people together. Also, and that's the other part that I always do, is the vision mission process. So always when you build an organization, to start out by not only having a vision, but building a shared vision with your peers, with the people you want to address, with the people you want to involve, with that a vision and then a mission, objectives, and all really this Vimosa process. And it takes time, but I think
Yes.
for people who want to build NGOs, look at the Vimosa process. I think it's the most valuable tool to start an organization, because you always think, and I don't know if you have this experience, but oh yeah, we know what we want. But once you really
Mm-hmm.
want to formulate the vision, suddenly there's different ideas of what this vision should be, really in 10, 20 years ahead, at 50 for in that sense, with all resources. It looks different for different people. So
I agree.
finding common ground makes a big difference. And from there, I think once you have the shared vision and a mission statement and objectives and things, and down bottom line to an action plan for the year, you know what you're doing, and then you can check back.
Yes.
right? So when you have an action plan at the end of this process, you know if that your action plan resonates with the vision and you work towards the vision. And I think regular check-ins with yourself, but also with your peers and your fellow board members or trainees or whoever is part of your organization, checking in about this vision, about the status of certain projects is important. And reassessing also, sometimes the vision needs to change.
Yeah.
And lastly, really, I would say being part of an organization should also be fun. So
Yes, I agree.
right?
I agree.
Not just about how it work. It is like it is. My motto often is, if you sit down and do it, something will come out of it. Because usually at a great organization, or even not even great, also good organizations,
Hmm.
if you sit down and do something and you say, I'm writing an article, I'm reading about this, you'll come and I'm meeting with this person and I want something will come out of it. But also, besides the hard work that you have to put in for great outcomes, it should be fun. And you should have fun with your friends or your peers or colleagues or whoever is part of your organization and address the issues together. So having a certain amount of looseness, I also think, within NGOs, because it's not our in especially in activism where it's not a full-time job, I think that's helpful.
I agree with you. And okay, there's a little, well, there's a lot to unpack there. We could totally do. There are probably full podcasts around like creating a vision, creating an NGO, and what have you. Personally, I understand very much the need for that strategic vision when engaging with your community or when creating an organization. And that is one of the reasons why the organizations that I personally get the most fulfillment from are like very small, because it can be a lengthy process when the people who are involved don't know or can't articulate quite yet their needs and what they want to get out of the organization. Whereas if you have been involved in creating organizations for a longer period of time, from the get-go, you understand that there is that checklist of things that you really all need to come to a common agreement on in
Mm-hmm.
order for the organization to be successful, in order to make sure that you're having fun while moving the needle or doing the work. But to people out there who are just getting started, if it's just you, you can have an idea in your head about what you want to get out of it. Once you start adding on 2 or 3 friends, I would encourage you just to meet over coffee or wine or what have you, and just talk about why you're there, why you're doing what you're doing, and write that down. Because the why is so important and it's really the core of that work. And if you keep a loose plan that sticks to those whys with your 2 or 3 friends, then you'll be okay. Now, if you are going to have more than 2 or 3 people, then I would look up that program. What was it that you mentioned? It started with a V.
BMOSA.
VMOSA. Google that. Because you're gonna need
Not
a
sponsor.
formula. If you want to be successful, if you really are setting out to accomplish something. And I think that really segues well, Dahlia, to the next kind of area I wanted to talk to you about, which is prioritization. I think we are both passionate people. We can both see that there are a lot of changes that we would like to make in the world. Well, I would say in our communities, in our cities, in our country, and in the world, right? Maybe not necessarily in that order, but in terms of population and direct impact. And we were sharing in the coffee break that I personally, okay, let me tell you how this happened. So I have an author that I really like. His name is Brandon Sanderson. And on his website, he has listed out all of the books that he intends to write in his lifetime. I don't know how old he is, but all of the books are connected. He has like a master outline. And I took that idea and I thought, well, okay, what are, in this universe of problems and out of this desire to kind of make the world a better place, what are the problems that I would like to help solve? And how many of those am I realistically able to get to at some level, again, community, city, state, country, within that given time frame? And then, like, how do those rank? Right. And I wish I could tell you that I'm organized enough to have an actual list, but but I have it's like a mental rubric. When someone comes to me with a problem, I'm like, how much time and energy am I really able to put into solving this problem? And sometimes it's just donating money, right? Sometimes it's referring someone to someone else. And then I'm guessing for you, sometimes it's creating an organization or supporting an organization to help in that area. So, how do you determine like the links that you'll go to support a cause or a need?
So I will start off by saying I have a note on my phone how to say no,
Mm,
because I do, similar to what you said, care about a lot of issues. And I also can empathize with issues that I wasn't aware of before, but should be when someone comes to me with that. But I can't, my life is not endless and I can't, my
right.
day is not endless. So I have to myself often recognize that and need to sit down with myself and recognize that I can't solve all the problems. But saying no doesn't mean just no, but saying no in a way that's still helpful to them. So referring them to this or that, or a grant, or people, or top tips, or a great podcast about how to whatever they want to do. uh,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean necessarily saying no completely, but having trying to support them still with their cause. And then eventually there are things to actually get down and do the hard work. So for me, um, I told you in the coffee break also, I think there's a lot to learn from you on that because um, I don't do it systematically in the sense of like, okay, there's an issue. I need to sit down and think if I want to give my time to this necessarily. It's often a bit of a feeling. I do have some set points, for example, relevance,
Mm-hmm.
impact. I'm very impact need based approach with an impact oriented mind. So the impact is important to me, and the impact doesn't need to be headlines all over the world. The impact must be measured and must be acknowledged in some way.
Yeah.
But if something doesn't have, if the outcome impact is not something I would think is relevant, then it's not a cost for me. And then the other part definitely, is realistic and sustainability. So
Mm-hmm.
it has to be a realistic goal in terms of it can be a step on the ladder. It can also be the full ladder at once.
Yeah.
But if it's not realistic, it's not going to be successful. It's not going to be empowering for others or myself. So some part of realistic is important. And then especially with building NGOs, but also in general, sustainability is relevant. If I'm not there, it should work. And the goal is it doesn't mean. I
Yes.
mean, it sounds, but the goal of whatever activism I want to do also, it should work without me in terms of I love to invest in others. I take the time, and that's something I really do.
Mm-hmm.
Just this morning, I had a half an hour every early morning call with someone I invest my time in as a future young future leader.
Yes.
And yeah, and that's something I believe in is people invested in me, and I hope still will invest in me and giving me advice and whatever. But I also the best way forward is but with your time is to share your knowledge and share your experience and empower others. So mentorship might be a
Yes.
program for that. Maybe not necessarily a fully professional mentorship program, but definitely investing in others, and that's a way to give, and that's a way to prioritize also to say, okay, listen, I can't help you in building this institution, but I can help you to have the skills to build yourself. So that would be
That's
something
wonderful.
I would like to do even more. However, also there are more people that I would like to invest in than I have the time. So I will admit that I'm very far away from having a great system of saying this is how you should prioritize or this is how you
Certainly. Certainly.
absolutely not. I think it's part of passionate political activist people that you are just hooked. And if something, if a cause or a person or an organization not only presents well to you, it's just sometimes there's a hook and you're just like, yes, I need to give time and energy or money, donate or whatever. It's a feeling of, okay, this is something I need to do. And the more adult way maybe or strategic way it would be to sit down and go through the list of points that I mentioned. but I'm personally not necessarily there yet. I just
Now, you
decide.
mentioned mentorship, and as it so happens, at least as of right now, our episode on mentorship, which I believe is episode 6, is the most popular um, episode of the podcast. Yes. And so I wonder, where in your journey do you really notice that a mentor came in? Because we've gone through a lot of your life, right? There was up to 6th grade where you first got to vote, then through school, and now into your professional journey. And at least through that episode, I know there could be different mentors at different stages. But if you had one mentor memory of maybe someone who invested in you, I think we'd love to hear it.
I have multiple. I do have an actual mentorship. So I am a mentee. I have a mentor, and I
Oh
do
wow.
think that's one of the most relevant things, not to do, but to engage in as a
Mm-hmm.
young professional. I find it very helpful on a personal, but really also professional level to have a mentor that is not connected to your organization or your workplace, but outside and has a different view on it. Maybe is connected to you somehow, obviously. And I also, by my experience, at least, can recommend gender plays a role. What you in the US call race, which is not a term in Germany anymore, it's not allowed really.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, it's being outlawed as we speak, more or
Oh,
less.
interesting.
Good though,
I
because
will
it has a
Google that.
different background.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so but race and gender and besides political views play a role in your mentorship
Yeah.
besides the professional work of this person. um, so mentor moments that I remember definitely was I went to Jewish summer camps as a kid, and one of my goals really almost always like I want to be a camp leader myself.
Oh,
And I
okay.
still I did it for many years, and it was definitely an empowering experience for weeks and weeks on end to prepare very intense programs for young adults, and still love this work. And it's very important, especially for Jewish identity and Jewish political activism today. It's really the foundation.
Hmm.
In Germany, I can speak in Europe also in general. And there was a person that early on gave me the confidence that um, I was always a very active kid and engaged and interested in volunteering, and
Yeah.
just because I wanted to. And sometimes I would say some more lazy adults were like, "What is she up to?" And I'm like, "No, nothing. I'm interested. I don't know. I'm up. I have time. Why not?" And this person was very helpful in saying, um, "Cherish your energy." And
Hmm.
that's something I really along the way this I don't even think it was meant as a mentor session, but a moment of cherish your energy, because it does, where your energy is special to you, and it's probably special maybe to others, but if you can use it the way you want to,
Yeah.
then it makes a big difference in your life. So that was definitely a moment, because I also looked up to this person. It's like, yeah, this person was a great camp leader, and I thought, wow, if I can be so cool at some point in my life, then
Oh, that's
I made it.
beautiful.
Yeah, that's definitely one. And then yeah, that's one mentorship moment, and I can absolutely recommend looking into uh, finding a mentor. And there's so many great programs out there of
Mhm.
matching people, or if not, look in their network, or ask other people if they can recommend someone. I've not I've yet to meet someone who tried to find a mentor and didn't find one.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for that. I know that was a little off script, so I appreciate you taking the time and answering that question in such a beautiful way. Cherish your energy.
All right.
That's a good takeaway. I think that you will have a lengthier answer to this next question than most people have so far. A lot of times, I like to close asking how we can support you or an organization that you support, and sometimes people are like, "Oh, I don't know," and I am going to bet my next cup of coffee that you've got a good response to this one. So, Dahlia, how can someone listening or watching support you in your anti hate work or an organization that you support?
Ooh, now it's like picking from your favorite child. So I would say the first way to support a cause or person or whatever it is you're supporting is in a free way by signing on, for example, the ADL International Affairs newsletter, and to get engaged with the topics of anti-Semitism in the global world, really in our world completely, and anti-Semitism in Europe specifically for our sake. That's one that I would say is free. It informs. It's really important to know, first of all, because before you act, you need to know. So that's one. Then the other way is definitely get out of your bubble. So if my favorite thing to ask people, what can I do to fight my own biases, is look at your Twitter, your Instagram, your Facebook, TikTok, whatever it is you use as a social media every day, more or less every day. And if the people that you see on the screen all look like you and have the story that you have and are saying the same thing that you are saying, maybe you should tweak it in terms of actively looking for different backgrounds, different storylines, different experience. And by that, I don't mean follow white supremacists. I don't, absolutely not.
No.
I absolutely not. I just mean look a bit out of your bubble, get out of your bubble, and follow people who have interesting stories that you might not be aware of, having differently able body, different cultural, ethnic background, and listen to what their life realities are, because I bet my cup of coffee that you will not only enjoy it, but you will learn from it, and you yourself will grow from it in terms of identity building, value building for yourself, and you will love it. So that's definitely my go-getter for that, is get out of your bubble and follow people who are not exactly like you on social media, and then attend those events. If they recommend podcasts or if they recommend a book, give it a try. And I would bet definitely that most people would be positively surprised. And obviously, it wouldn't be an American-based podcast across the pond, philanthropy-wise, if you have too much money, sure, or not even too much. If you have money left over, obviously, give to ADL, specifically International Affairs, give to the Jewish Student Union in Germany, give to Keshet Germany. If you resonate with any of those three organizations, I would highly appreciate, obviously, or those organizations would appreciate your contribution. But I don't think contribution and support is financial only. I really think it starts with, as I said in the beginning, it starts with yourself, with your dinner table, with using the resources these organizations put out. Check out the website. There's so many interesting resources. And yeah, looking forward to get out of my bubble maybe a bit more after this again, and rework my feed maybe.
This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for DMing us out of the blue and coming on in your afternoon and my early morning, and really starting my day off right, and for sharing your insights and your work with our community. It's been an incredible treat, I think. Thank you so much.
I feel exactly the same. This was a very enlightening conversation with you, and I learned, as I said, I really learned from you again, and I hope to look back at this episode and then grow from that, and thank you for inviting me and being part of this. I was looking for a great new podcast, and I think I found one, so
that's so sweet.
Forward to the other episode.
Oh yes, next week your friend Josh I think will be on, so fingers crossed that we get that.
Whom I met through political activism.
Oh, really? Oh, I will have to ask him about it. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Yay! That was fantastic. Thank you for joining in the conversation today. If you would like exclusive access to live streams of these conversations, if you want to hear what goes on during the coffee breaks, or if you'd like to join a community of people who help to make this podcast possible, then please join our Patreon community at patreon.com/bottomlesscoffee. Bottomless Coffee Podcast is produced by me, Jerome Evans, on social media everywhere as @JeromeTEvans. Our Patreon producers are listed in the episode description. You can connect with the podcast on Instagram at Bottomless Coffee Podcast. Our music is by Noir et Blanc V and God Mode. Thanks all, and I'll see you next time.